Hello everyone, it's Dr. Lee. I haven't put a video out in a long time, but this is a video about weight loss. It's something that I've been talking a lot to with my patients for many years. And you would think, so I do ENT, you would think that there's not that much to talk about with obesity and ENT, but obesity is one of these things that affects kind of every aspect of your health. And ENT problems are not excluded. The things, especially in ENT, that I deal with are allergy problems, reflux, which causes this feeling of having a lump in your throat and a lot of phlegm in the morning. And then a popular one recently is I started doing this Inspire implant for sleep apnea, and obesity is basically the #1 cause of sleep apnea. And these surgical treatments for sleep apnea don't work well if you're obese, and it works much better if you're relatively normal weight. Okay, so it's no secret that obesity has become a major problem in the United States. Back in the 1960s, the percentage of Americans that were obese was, less than 10%. So by 1975, it was hovering a little over 10%. Now in 2016, it was over at like 37%. And then if you look at the most recent data, we're at 42%. So 42% of Americans are obese. And then if you look at um, obesity plus being overweight, so 42% of Americans are obese, and then another 31% are overweight. So if you add those together, that makes 73%. So almost 3/4 of Americans are either overweight or obese. And this is just, it's a very common problem, and it's gotten to the point these days that if you're just overweight, people think that you're thin, um, because being overweight is the normal state, and people that are of normal weight are considered to be extremely thin. Um, the way that we calculate this in the medical literature is using something called body mass index. It's called BMI. Now, this is not a perfect measure of obesity, because all it takes into account is your height and your weight, and then you compute your BMI. So I put in mine here, but like let's say you're 5'11 and 200 pounds, then your BMI would be 27.9, which would be considered overweight. And I think most people, if you ask them, hey, a 5'11 guy that's 200 pounds, is that person overweight? I think most people will say, no, they're not overweight. That's just a normal weight. Now, if you're a very muscular person, you can be 5'11 and 200 pounds. You are not overweight. You're just very muscular, and you would have a BMI that's considered overweight. So it doesn't account for fat percentage. So it does not work for very muscular people. So, hey, if you're 5'11, 200 pounds and you have a six pack, you are not overweight. But most people, if you're 5'11, 200 pounds and you have a little bit of a gut, you are overweight. For most people that are not athletes, BMI is a pretty good measure of whether you're normal weight. So normal weight is between 18.5 and 24.9. So like let's say, someone that's 170 pounds, that would be considered thin, I think, for most, if you ask most people. A 5'11 guy that's 170 pounds, most people would consider that thin. That is basically on the upper end of normal weight, which is 20, so 23.7 is close to 24.9. Let's say someone was 5'11 and 140 pounds. That would be someone that's considered extremely thin, I think, by most Americans. 5'11, 140 pounds. That is actually on the lower end of normal weight. It would not be until you hit about a 5'11 and 130 pounds where you would be considered underweight. So, because society has moved to become heavier, our view of what is normal has skewed to the point that we think that someone that's 145 pounds at 5'11 is extremely underweight, but that is not the case. That is a normal weight for a human being. Um, so let's go on to what are the problems that they cause. So being overweight, having a lot of fat, adipose tissue causes inflammation, and inflammation drives a lot of the problems. So we know that obesity causes metabolic dysfunction, diabetes, high blood pressure, all kinds of things like that. But in the ENT world, we worry more about like allergies. So it drives allergies, it drives cancer, It drives sleeping problems, especially sleep apnea being one of them. And it's very well known that the most effective surgery for obstructive sleep apnea is probably gastric bypass surgery because it causes people to lose weight. Now, I have personal feelings about gastric bypass surgery. I believe that surgery is something that should be done after you've exhausted all non-surgical options in most cases. And gastric bypass surgery is helpful in people that have tried every other method and cannot. But gastric bypass surgery, and surgery is something best avoided if you can get the same results without surgery. Um, and then obesity drives asthma, which is very closely related to allergy, and then obesity, severe asthma, inflammation, and allergy. And then something we don't talk about is globus sensation. So reflux is related to obesity, and also sleep apnea drives reflux as well. Okay, so the first thing when I talk to people about asking them to lose weight to help themselves with their health, they tell me, well, I have a hard time exercising because I can't find time to do it, or, I have a bad knee and it hurts, it's hard to exercise. And I tell these people that exercise is great. It's good for your health. Everyone should do it. It has many, many benefits, and exercise is absolutely a good thing to do. However, exercise is a pretty poor way of losing weight. It's a very inefficient way of losing weight. This is a little chart made by the Royal Society for Public Health out of the United Kingdom, and they tell you about how much exercise do you need to burn off the calories from eating a certain food. So let's say you have a can of soda. A can of soda will, you will drink that, probably within a few minutes. And if you would need to run, and this is running at a slow, this is an easy run, but you would have to run for 13 minutes to burn off the calories from one can of soda. So if you had a can of soda and like a medium mocha coffee in a day, so in one day you had so a lot of people have a coffee in the morning and then they have a soda at some time during the day. And if you had two of those things, you would have to run for almost 40 minutes to burn off just those two things. So you can see, or like let's say you had a can of soda, a coffee in the morning, and you went to your office and someone brought some cinnamon rolls, so you were going to have one of those. That would be an hour and 20 minutes of running. So who is going to run an hour and 20 minutes every day to offset just these relatively simple snacks that you're having? It's just not efficient. It's much easier to avoid eating those things and not have to run the hour and 20 minutes. So, okay, I will say exercise is very important and we should exercise, but you should not count on exercise as a way to lose weight. It's just not effective. I would say that exercise is an adjunct to a healthy life, not as a way to lose weight. So it's all about diet. And I think the most important thing about diet is this information from the Boston University School of Medicine. They have a webpage, and 98% of people who lose weight gain it back within 5 years. And 90% of people who lose weight gain back more weight than they originally lost. And only 5 to 10% of dieters maintain a weight loss greater than 10% of their baseline weight. And this is because it's very, very hard to lose weight. Everyone wants to lose weight. If losing weight was easy, then we wouldn't have the problem we have today where 3/4 of Americans are overweight or obese. And that's because most people think of diets as something to do temporarily until they get to their goals. So they have a goal, like I want to lose, 50 pounds or 30 pounds. And they say, I'm going to go on this diet and then I'm going to get to my goal, and then I can go back to the way I want to eat, the way I want to live. And that is absolutely the wrong way to think about it. So every diet works as long as you stay with it for the rest of your life. So you have to pick a diet that you can do for the rest of your life. If you're like, I can do this diet for a couple of months, that is not the diet for you. You need to pick a diet that you can do for forever. Okay, so let's go through a couple of popular diets. Um, this is like from Forbes magazine, and I think this is from, I don't know, some website that I found on Google. But we'll just go over a couple of the popular diets. So there's this Mediterranean diet, and the Mediterranean diet is, most people think, oh, Mediterranean diet, that's Italian food. You know, I like Italian food, so I can do Mediterranean diet. So it's not Italian food. Mediterranean diet is actually based on this paper right here from 1995 from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition by Dr. Willett. And what he did is he studied the diet that was eaten in southern Italy, in Crete, and much of the rest of Greece in the early 1960s. So this was southern, like rural Italy, rural Greece and Crete in the 1960s, before the advent of fast food and just industrial food. And this area, he picked that area because at that time they noticed that the adult life expectancy there was very high. The rates of coronary heart disease, cancers, and other chronic diseases were very low. And they wanted to know, what are these people doing that made them very healthy? And what they found out is the diet is characterized by abundant plant foods, so fruits, vegetables, breads, other forms of cereals, potatoes, beans, nuts, and seeds, fresh fruit as the typical daily dessert. So instead of having cake or ice cream or pie as the dessert, they would have apples or oranges or pears, some kind of fruit as the dessert, and then olive oil as the principal source of fat. And then dairy products, fish and poultry were consumed in low to moderate amounts. 0 to 4 eggs consumed weekly, so very few eggs. Almost no meat, and wine consumed in low to moderate amounts, basically with meals. Now, they had a diet that was very low in saturated fat. So saturated fats are fats from animals, butter, fat that's in meat, but very high in total fat. Their total fat was up to 25 to 30% of their entire calories, and that principal source was in the source of olive oil. So these people would consume gallons of olive oil per year. Individually. So a large amount of olive oil was part of. So it's not a low fat diet, it's a low saturated fat diet. But that is the diet. So the diet is mostly vegetables and plant stuff, no processed foods, and a lot of olive oil. Very little dairy, cheese, fish, poultry, and almost no meat. And if you read this paper, the amount of meat that they were eating was 35 grams per day. That is 1 ounce per day, 1 ounce per day of any kind of meat. And that's essentially, they were eating, meat like once a week, because no one eats 1 ounce of meat. That's just a tiny, tiny amount. Okay, so that's the Mediterranean diet. Then there's this thing called the 5-2 diet, which I guess was popular in the United Kingdom, Austria. That's where you eat normally for 5 days, and then you have a restriction for 2 days. And that's kind of an intermittent fasting type of diet. Then there's this paleo diet that's very popular amongst CrossFitters and certain groups. And this is the idea that Paleolithic man was healthier, and Paleolithic man would hunt food, and it's like the hunter-gatherer diet. Now, this is kind of, we don't know what Paleolithic people ate. It's just presumed that they didn't have certain foods. And so they have a diet that is grass-fed meat, seafood, fresh fruits and vegetables, eggs, nuts, seeds, and healthy oils. And so what is the similarity here? In paleo diet, you're allowed to eat more meat than in the Mediterranean diet, but it still emphasizes a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and healthy oils. And you can't have refined sugar or grains, potatoes, or beans. So that's the difference. Mediterranean diet, you can have whole grains and beans. Paleo diet, you cannot have whole grains and beans. You have more meat in this diet. So people like that because people enjoy meat. But remember, the type of meat that they're eating here is grass-fed meat, which is not the kind of meat that you can find in the grocery store generally. There's this alkaline diet. This is the idea of like alkaline water and things like that. Your body actually has a very good way of regulating pH, so I don't know how much stock I put into this. Weight Watchers diet, I'm not very familiar with it. Atkins diet is very, very popular. This is, again, uh, lot of fruits and vegetables, but they want to get rid of all carbohydrates. So all carbohydrates are gone. So you can't have breads or pastas um, or you know, any kind of grains. Whole 30 is a diet that encourages eating lots of grains and beans and eating lots of whole unprocessed foods. And okay, and then there's this intermittent fasting, which is some people have like a window. It's like a 16-8 window where they don't eat for 16 hours of the day and they eat during 8 hours a day. They have a window. That's a very popular thing. Okay, what if you look at all these different diets: Mediterranean diet, vegetarian diet, DASH diet, vegan diet, pescatarian diet, Ornish diet? Um, there's a couple of similarities in all of them. They vary in various things. The Atkins diet as well. They all emphasize lots of healthy fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts. And they all emphasize not having any processed carbohydrates. So those are the two things that they all agree on. What they don't agree, so that's very clear, is that lots of fruits and vegetables and getting rid of processed sugar and processed carbs, those are all bad. Like every single diet agrees on that. What they don't necessarily agree on is like the Atkins diet wants you to eat a lot of meat, and most other diets want you to reduce meat. So Atkins is kind of the outlier in that category. And the Atkins diet does have some problems with cardiovascular effects. It's not very good for your heart. The healthiest diets are the ones that are the diets that people traditionally ate in most parts of the world. So the Mediterranean diet has become very popular because it was studied early on in the scientific literature, and a lot of research is done on that. However, that's just a byproduct of just having that diet studied first. There are many other diets that are very healthy, and there's a very well-known thing called the blue zones that someone looked at. They went around the world and they figured out where are the healthiest people, and they found out that the healthiest people that lived the longest and healthiest were in Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Costa Rica, Greece, and Loma Linda, California. Now, if you look at these places, Sardinia, Italy, and Greece are basically following the Mediterranean diet. Okinawa, Japan is following an Asian diet, and their diet is very high in rice, but also very high in vegetables and seaweed and things like that. So if you look at all these diets, these are the things that they've recognized, that in all these places, their food is 95 to 100% plant-based. So if there is any meat or dairy or eggs, it's like at most 5% of their diet. The rest of it is plants. Because for most of history, um, meat was extremely expensive. You couldn't, you didn't want to kill your cow because your cow plowed your field and gave you, and did perform labor for you. So you just didn't want to eat meat unless it was like a special occasion. So people would save eating meat for like birthdays or some kind of celebration, weddings, that kind of stuff. And your daily diet basically had no meat products, animal products. So 95 to 100% plant-based, and then whole grains, lots of beans, drink basically water. That is the highest source of unnecessary empty calories, is drinking sodas, coffees, fruit juice, that kind of stuff. And then people talk about diet soda. That has its own set of problems, and maybe I'll do a video about that. But diet soda is not your friend, um, and you don't want to do that. A snack on nuts. If you're going to have a snack on nuts, go, and then maybe once a week you can have some fish, and you should almost never have meat. It's just not good for you, and dairy is not good for you, essentially. Now, the dairy industry wants you to think that um, drinking milk gives you strong bones and gives you calcium. If you look at where people eat the most dairy products and correlate it with osteoporosis, you'll see that osteoporosis is very high in places where they have a lot of dairy. There's plenty of calcium in green leafy vegetables, and it's much more bioavailable than in dairy. Okay, so that is basically the way to lose weight, is to eat a diet that is mostly plant-based, get rid of processed carbs and sugar. And if you eat a lot of plant-based foods, they just have a lot of fiber and roughage, and a lot of the calories that you ingest do not get absorbed. So not all calories are the same. So if you drink 100 calories of sugar in a soda, you're going to absorb 100% of those calories. However, if you eat 100 calories in like oatmeal, a lot of that is going to be tied up in the fiber and roughage and probably will not get absorbed by you. So you can ingest the same amount of calories, but the amount that your body actually ingests is going to be much less depending on the form in which you consume it. And then the important thing is talking about exercise. You want to work in exercise in a way that it's non-optional in your day. So most people think of exercise as something optional in your day, like going to the gym to do it. And eventually some people build up a habit that they go to the gym, but until you build up the habit, it's nice to make it non-optional. Just like park your car as far away from the entrance of your work as possible, so you just get that extra little bit of exercise. Walk. If they're anywhere that you can walk to, just walk there. And I know in America the infrastructure works against us. It's very hard to walk anywhere and do anything without a car, which has contributed to our poor health and obesity problems. But if you have someplace you want to go that's like half a mile or less away, you should walk there. Don't drive, walk. I mean, what I do personally is I ride my bike to work every day, and that's about 9 miles each way, so about almost 20 miles round trip every day that I'm on a bike. And I think it's something that if you can work it into your lifestyle, biking to work is one of the best things that I've ever done. It's a great way to start the day. You feel refreshed and you're outside. You got your dose of sunlight every day and fresh air, and it gives you a baseline guaranteed amount of exercise that's non-optional, because you have to get to work and you have to come back from work, and then you can do more exercise on top of that. But make it a habit to do at least 30 minutes of moderate exercise a day. It's not going to help you lose weight necessarily, but it's going to put some good habits into you to make you healthier. But you have to pick a diet that you can stick with for the rest of your life, and the thing that's going to help you the most is eating a diet that's mostly plant-based and has a lot of fiber to reduce the amount of calories that you ingest that gets absorbed into your body. And all that fiber makes you just feel fuller because it just takes up space in your gut. And if you want more that feeling of fullness, you can add more healthy fats such as like avocados, um, olive oil, and nuts. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful for some people. If you have any questions, put them below. Again, this is not medical advice. This is just information that may or may not be helpful for you.